and welcome to Plus Sports, the show where we give a different perspective on sports as we look at the stories of athletes who not only amaze but also inspire. I'm Patricia Bermudez Hizon. Here we will give you not just the latest in the sporting world, but also the stories behind the athletes' struggles, victories, and motivation. We go beyond the stats as we celebrate the great athletic feats with you. With that said, let's go straight to the big news from the Olympics here on Take on Tokyo. We are now on day 8 of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, and the medal chase continues for several Filipino athletes who competed at the games today in boxers Nesthy Petecio, Carlo Paalam, EJ Obiena, and Juvik Pagunsan. It took the Philippines 97 years to win its first Olympic gold medal, but we may only have to wait a couple of more days for our next one, thanks to Nesthy Petecio. Petecio defeated Italy's Irma Testa via split decision in the semifinals of the women's featherweight division to advance to the final and assure herself of at least a silver medal. After losing the first round, Petecio was more aggressive in the second round, eventually earning the round and setting up a thrilling third and final round. Her momentum continued into round 3, where she chased after her taller opponent, who is a European champion. At the end of the 3 rounds of action, 4 of the 5 judges at ringside gave the fight to the 29-year-old Petecio, who will go for the gold on August 3. Petecio wasn't the only victorious boxer in the ring, as earlier in the day, Carlo Paalam also advances further in the men's flyweight division. Paalam defeated Algeria's Mohamed Fleissy via unanimous decision in their round of 16 fight this morning. Paalam, who is making his Olympic debut, looked like the more experienced fighter and outclassed his opponent, who is a 3-time Olympian. The 23-year-old from Bukidnon thus moves on to the quarterfinals, where he will face another tough challenge in Shako Bedinzoirov of Uzbekistan. A win in the quarters assures Paalam of at least a bronze medal. But unlike his last name suggests, the young boxer's journey in Tokyo is far from over. Meanwhile, another Filipino athlete in EJ Obiena is through to the finals of the men's pole vault event and is looking to add to our medal tally. Obiena easily cleared the 5.50-meter bar and 5.65-meter bar, but it took Obiena 3 tries before he was finally able to clear the 5.75 meters and book a spot in the finals. After incurring 2 fouls in the first 2 attempts at 5.75 meters, he was finally able to clear it in his 3rd try and let a shout of celebration as he did so. The moment was certainly heart-stopping, but Obiena is now among the top 11 pole vaulters who advance to the next stage of competition. What a great day it is for our Filipino athletes. And finally, another Filipino athlete competing at the games is golfer Juvik Pagunsan, who just finished competing in the 3rd round of the men's individual stroke play event, where he shot a 5 over par and finished tied for 56. Pagunsan earlier finished tied for 5th at the end of the first round of play, but slipped down to 25th place after the 2nd round. He hopes to make up for lost ground, though, as he continues to compete at the Kasumugaseki Country Club. Joining us today to discuss the feats of our Pinoy athletes who are still in contention is the Dean of Philippine Sports, veteran sportscaster and renowned journalist, Quinito Henson. Thanks so much, Quinito, for joining us from Tokyo. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Now you're seeing the mess that is my room.
It's okay. That's really how it is. But we'll make sense, not just of the mess, but we'll make sense out of all these great news that's coming from Tokyo. As we were mentioning earlier, today was a great day for Pinoy athletes. But let's start with EJ Obiena. I know you had talked to him before and after he competed, and you also have been talking to his coaches. So tell us about his mindset heading into the qualifiers.
Well, first of all, I want to be able to say that EJ Obiena is not staying in the Olympic Village. And the reason why I've been able to interact with him and his father, as well as his osteopath and his physiologist, and rather physiotherapist, and the head of the Patapa delegation is because all of them are billeted in the same hotel that we are in, which is the Conrad Hotel. And you might be wondering, why are they not in the Olympic Village? It's because their floor was compromised. There was a foreign coach from our rowing team that was tested positive, and so we had to move out of the Olympic Village, and that floor was compromised, and that was where EJ and his team were going to stay. So it was decided by the Patapa Secretary General Terry Capistran, who's here in Tokyo with us, to move them out of Olympic Village. So they're all here in the Conrad Hotel, where the POC staff, the media are also billeted. So we were able to interact with them very, very closely. But in answer to your question, the mindset of EJ is just amazing. Before this competition, he was actually quite unsure what his mental frame of mind would be, because when he arrived here, he didn't know whether his Poles from Nevada had arrived or not. They actually arrived a few days before he came in, and he finally saw them for the first time the day after he arrived, which was only last week. So he was able to jump a few days ago with the new poles 8 times, and the poles are about 12. He brought about 6 with him from Italy. He said that was the big thing. That was his big concern, whether he'd be able to practice with his poles. And that's off his chest now. But he was not happy at all with his performance today. He told me in no uncertain terms, um, I performed shit. That's what, excuse me. But I think that's a good thing. Of course, I told him, hey EJ, no negative vibes. Let's be positive about this. You're in the final. He barely made it. He barely made it to the finals. Um, Supposed to be 12 qualifiers for the final out of about 30. Some of the vaulters scratched out because of COVID problems, because of injuries, but 12 was the magic number supposed to be. But there were actually 11 who made 5.75. So there was a triple tie for 12th. And so the organizer said, we're not going to have the 3 go to another jump off. So they said, let's have 14 qualify. So there will be 14 qualifiers in the final. And EJ said, and his father, they're going to recover from this erase. They said, forget about what happened today. He had 3 attempts to make 575. As you said, Patricia, he had 2 fouls, but he made it on his 3rd attempt. Now and they said he was more relaxed on his 3rd attempt. His father was actually saying that the reason why he fouled the first 2 attempts is because he couldn't see the measurements on the ground, because there was so much movement around the track. People running, the officials inadvertently making the coaches not see where the measurements were. And you have to be exact in determining where the lines are, because that's where the takeoff comes from. And so his father, Coach Emerson, was telling me that the coaches had a difficult time reading the measurements because of that reason. But well, it's the bottom line is he's in the final, and in the final he's going to go for it. Sam Kendrick is out of the equation because, as we all know, I've been looking at the odds. By the way, there's a lot of betting going on, believe it or not, on the Olympic finishers, and EJ was running anywhere between 5th and 7th in the odds, with Kendrick's number 2. So Kendrick is gone, so that gives an opening now for the others to move up. And EJ is hoping that he'll be able to land a podium finish for the country.
It's really exciting. Of course, we are all hoping for a medal here and even do better than the previous 2 bronzes that our country has ever had in athletics, which were back in 1932 in men's high jump with Toribio, and 1936 with Miguel White in the men's 400-meter hurdles. But you talked about that field of finalists and what it would take for EJ to soar to the winner's podium. More than the skills, you talk about the mindset, because it's as if that would be the big factor for EJ heading into the finals.
I think all the stars have to be aligned for EJ to podium. That means his mind has to be very clear. He told me that when he goes for a jump, he's just looking at the bar, and he's not looking at anything else. But there were distractions today, distractions that he didn't experience during the pandemic. And as you know, he performed very well in Europe from the beginning of this year until just about a month or 3 weeks before this competition in Tokyo. So as you can imagine, during this pandemic, there aren't too many spectators. So he was able to focus very clearly. All of a sudden now, even while we're still in the pandemic and Tokyo is experiencing a big surge in cases, there was just too much movement in on the track today that he wasn't used to. And I think he'll have to get used to that. I think he's now conditioned his mind to focus on what has to be done, and I think he's a very determined guy. Right after Tokyo, he's going straight back to Europe to compete in the to finish the outdoor season. Of course, he now has a German girlfriend waiting for him. The German girlfriend is a triple jumper and also trains in Formia. Her name is Caroline, and you know he's so much like a European now talking to EJ. It's amazing because he can speak Italian now, and he's very articulate. Very um, when he speaks, he's so expressive. Like most Europeans are. Especially the Italians. So it's been a transformation of personality, and I'm hoping that the confidence, the exuberance of EJ will show and bring him and lift him to a podium finish on Tuesday.
I love having all these insights from you, Quinito. Thanks so much. I'd like to move to boxing now. Yeah, everyone is so elated about Nesthy Petecio's win against Italy's Irma Testa, which assures us of at least a silver medal, something we last had in 1996 with Onyak Velasco. But do share with us what you like best about Nesthy's mentality and approach in that fight.
Well, let me tell you something about Petecio and Hidilyn Diaz together. And this is something that hasn't been talked about at all. The similarity between the two is not just because Hidilyn already has a gold and Nesthy is on the cusp of getting a gold, but Hidilyn competed in a division that was created just for the Tokyo Olympics. You remember in 2008, in her first Olympic stint, she competed in the 58 kilogram division. 2012 in London, the same division, 58. And then in Rio, she dropped down to 53. She had a difficult time keeping her weight at 53. But guess what? Providentially, here in Tokyo, they've eliminated the 53 kilogram division and they've created a 55 kilogram division. And it's a perfect division for Hidilyn because she could still retain her strength and power and not have to reduce so much to 53. And that 2 kilogram difference meant the world to her. And now we've got Nesthy Petecio. Before these Olympics, think about it. 2012 was when they introduced women's boxing. And women's boxing from 2012 and 2016 had only 3 divisions: flyweight, lightweight, and welterweight. But guess what, Patricia? Here in Tokyo, for the Olympics, they've created a featherweight division, a 57 kilogram division. That's a perfect fit for Nesthy. Through the years, Nesthy has really had difficulty finding herself in women's boxing. She has tried fighting at 51, at 53, even at 60, at 57. They tried her at flyweight. She was too big. They tried her at lightweight. She was too small. But those were the only 2 weight categories available to her in the Olympics. Until now, they've created a featherweight division, I would say, almost for her, just like they created the 55 kilogram division, almost for Hidilyn. So this is amazing. Nobody's thought of this. I'm only sharing this to you for the first time now. I'm going to write about it, of course, but this is amazing, and I think it's all very providential. This is God's gift to the Philippines. I really believe it.
I love that.
I don't want to preempt Nesthy because I think the gold medal match will be very difficult. We still don't know her opponent because the opponent will be found out later in the semifinal of the featherweight division. But whoever that opponent is, Nesthy's already hurdled 2 huge obstacles. She took out the number 1 seed, Liu Ting of Chinese Taipei. Then she took out the European champion just today, who stands at 5'8". Can you imagine? So, but still, she can't be overconfident. She knows that, um, the ultimate prize is the gold. She just can't settle for the silver. And for Nesthy, for all her hardships, do you know that once she stopped training because she wanted to finish her hotel and restaurant management education in the University of Baguio? So she stopped training, and the president of the University of Baguio, Peter Ray Bautista, assured her,
Yes.
you don't have to stop training. Even if you're 40 years old, you can always come back to University of Baguio. We'll give you the education. You can finish. You can still have your free tuition. But she said, no, I want to finish my education. And so she did. As a result, when she fought in 2018 for the World Championships, she only had 2 weeks of training. And she lost badly to Arias of Colombia, 5-0. Incidentally, if you remember, she beat Arias, the same opponent who beat her in 2018 in this Tokyo Olympics. So I think the focus is there. Nesthy, before winning the gold medal at the SEA Games, Patricia, I'm sure you remember, she had 2 silver medal finishes before winning the gold in the Southeast Asian Games. So she's had a lot of, ups and downs in her career. But I think now she's focused. And the big turnaround I feel for this boxing team is not just the head coach, Don Abnett, whom I think is, very qualified to run this boxing program, but also
Yes.
because the opportunity that the Thai boxing camp gave our team. They were there for 3 months, and ABAP brought over a team of 7 sparring partners and 5 coaches to focus on 3 fighters because Yumir Marshall was training in the US. Can you imagine? 7 sparring partners, 5 coaches focused on 3 fighters,
Three boxers.
looking at their weak points, looking at their strengths, and developing confidence, and absolutely no distractions, no family to think of. And I think that training camp has proved very well for all of them. And we're seeing the benefit of that training camp showing up here in the boxing competitions.
Well, because of that, Paalam is also a name who has been so impressive, especially against that Olympic veteran who we were talking about earlier. Tell us about his chances now against the fighter from Uzbekistan in his next fight.
It's going to be tough. Don, however, is very confident of Paalam's chances. The flyweight division is a division that's usually very favorable to us. Um, Earlier I talked about the changes in the weight divisions in the women's category. In the men's, they've also made a lot of changes. They took away the light flyweight class, which is a class that has given us 3 medals out of 5 in Olympic boxing before Tokyo. And that hurt us because light flyweight is a division that's always been a favorite of Filipino boxers. So that's gone. But Carlo Paalam has moved up in weight. So the light flyweight we saw in Carlo Paalam, he has shifted over to the flyweight division. Uzbekistan is more known to be dominant in the middleweight and the upper weight divisions, not so much in the lower weight divisions. But his opponent is very skilled. I think he's very experienced. So Paalam has his work cut out for him. I'm very hopeful though that he'll pull through because just one more win and he's assured of a bronze. And Patricia, right now we've got 1 gold and an assured silver, so that's already 2 medals in the bag. We need 3 to equal our richest medal harvest in history. That was 1932 when we had
Wow.
3 bronze medals. But we have a gold and a silver. If we just bring in 2 more, just 2 more, this would be the richest harvest ever for the Philippines in Olympic history.
And that's why I want to ask you about Yumir Marshall and his scheduled fight tomorrow against Armenia's Arman Darchinyan, who's also a pro fighter like him. We know that, as you mentioned, a guaranteed medal is at stake. What does Marshall need to do to get the job done, Quinito?
Well, I think he needs to be able to make sure that he fights his fight and not fight Darchinyan's fight. I think that's very important. Darchinyan is slow. He fights pretty much like his uncle, Vic, who was demolished twice by Nonito Donaire. But this Darchinyan is a hard puncher like Marshall, and that's good for us because if you feel that you've got power, you wanna test it against Marshall. And I feel that it is in this weight division, there's no one stronger than Marshall. You will beat Marshall with skill and distance fighting. You can't beat him when you're fighting toe to toe. So I'm hoping that Darchinyan makes a slugfest out of this, that
Yeah.
they engage, because that's where Yumir Marshall is going to show at his brightest. But if Darchinyan decides to stick and run, I don't think that's his style because he's too slow for that.
Mhm.
Um, I think Marshall is ready for whatever he sees in the ring. He'll cut him off. He'll make sure that this guy feels his power in pretty much the same way that he made his first opponent feel his power very early. Um, once that happens, it's very, very much like Manny Pacquiao. He makes you taste his power right at the start, and then he changes your mental frame of mind completely after that. It's like you've won already half the battle once your opponent has tasted your power, and the rest is just easy sailing. Maybe that will happen in Yumir's fight tomorrow. Um, I think he's very well prepared, and again, providentially, that training camp in Colorado Springs did him a lot of good. If that didn't happen, if he had stayed in LA longer, they're saying that he shouldn't have gone back here. He went to General Santos, he went to Zamboanga, he went to all these places. He took so many weeks off from his training. But I thought it was a good break for him. But that when he went over to Colorado Springs, that he showed his determination. Abab sent two coaches with him, Gerson Nietes and Ronald Chavez. So I mean, the guy is so prepared. He knows that the whole country is behind him, and I'm really hoping for the best that Lumir gets it.
Well, we are too. Thanks so much, Quinito. We really appreciate your time and your valuable insights. And we hope to hear from you again soon. Thank you so much.
Anytime, anytime. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you. That was Dean Quinito Henson of the Philippine Star and veteran broadcaster who shared with us his take on our Pinoy athletes still competing in Tokyo. Let's now check out the medal tally with the Olympics in full swing at the Tokyo Olympics. Of course, all the action that's been happening there. It's time for us to finally take stock of the leaders and the numbers of Olympic medals won in our latest medal tally. As of 12 noon, China is still on top with a tally of 19 gold medals and 41 total medals. Host country Japan, meanwhile, is following closely with 17 golds and 28 medals overall. The United States, meanwhile, remains back at the third spot with 16 gold medals and 44 total medals, while the Russian Olympic Committee athletes have 10 golds and 44 in total. And rounding out the top five is Australia, which also has a 10 gold medal haul and 26 total medals. Meanwhile, Great Britain, South Korea, France, Germany, and Canada are also among the top 10 countries with the most Olympic medals. Over at the 34th spot, the Philippines is still sitting with our lone gold medal, courtesy of Heidelin Diaz. But our remaining athletes in Tokyo can very much add to that number before the games are over. And that's our take on Tokyo. We have previously talked about the burden of expectations that are placed on athletes. And as the athletic events begin at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, few athletes are facing more pressure than American track and field athlete Noah Lyles. At just 24 years old, Lyles is still looking for his first Olympic gold medal after missing out on qualifying at the Rio Olympics 5 years ago. However, there's a reason why he's tipped to be one of the favorites in the men's 200-meter dash event, which is his signature event. Though he is yet to win a medal at the Olympics, Lyles has won at almost every other level, including the World Athletics Championships back in 2019. He is already being considered as one of the stars of Team USA and has already scored endorsement deals and is featured in promotions for the Olympics. But one thing about Lyles is that even though he is competing against the world's best athletes and is at the most prestigious sporting event in the world, he never forgets to have fun. He is facing tremendous pressure to deliver his first Olympic medal for the US, and there have been comparisons to one of the greatest stars of the Olympics and sprinter Usain Bolt. But Lyles is not letting himself succumb to the pressure and is just focusing on his debut at the Olympics. Perhaps the story of Lyles is a reminder not to take ourselves too seriously and also have fun and enjoy what it is that we are doing in life. If an Olympian competing at the highest level of sport can shrug off the pressure and have fun, then, we can also do it. That's it for our young Noah Lyles right here on Athlete's Feet. While their male counterparts may get all the headlines, you could make the case that the United States women's basketball team has been more dominant in recent years. While the rest of the world seems to be closing the gap between them and the US men's basketball team, the women's team has remained dominant, especially at the Olympics, where they have won all the gold medals since 1996. This year's team that is playing in the Tokyo Olympics certainly wants to keep it that way, as they have several veterans. But one of their younger players is actually having a stellar season, both in the WNBA and in international basketball. Today, we take a closer look at Team USA's EJ Wilson on women in sports. The 6'4" Wilson has been destined for greatness at a very young age, from the time that she was quite young, but she only began to really scratch at her tremendous potential once she played for the University of South Carolina in the NCAA. There, she helped the Gamecocks win the NCAA title in 2017, where she was also named as the most outstanding player of the tournament. Wilson's success would follow her in the WNBA, where she was selected with the first overall pick by the Las Vegas Aces. Now, 3 seasons into her NBA career, the 24-year-old is an MVP and a 3-time All-Star for the Aces. Even though Team USA has veteran players like Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi, who are both considered among the greatest of all time, Wilson has earned the trust of Team USA head coach Don Staley, who was also her head coach at South Carolina. Wilson even led the Americans in scoring in their first 2 games in Tokyo and is looking to help them win another gold medal. She has indeed achieved a lot at such a young age, and she put it all in perspective when a statue was made for her outside her alma mater's basketball gym. Wilson, who clearly cherished her school's tribute for her, said that her grandmother couldn't even walk around the college campus during her time. But now she has a statue built in the area, and that is the important thing: working hard and being able to plant the seeds. Wilson has certainly become or come a long way since her humble beginnings, and her grandmother would certainly be proud of her and what she has accomplished. And just like she said, it's all about working hard and planting seeds that, if done well, can grow and bloom and pay off. There is a lot more that Wilson will accomplish in and outside the basketball court, but it's certainly nice to look back and admire what she's already done and how many women she's inspired and influenced at such a young age. And that's it for Team USA's EJ Wilson here on Women in Sports. From women's basketball, we go to men's basketball, where there's been plenty of action, especially when it comes to the PBA and our Gilas-Pilipinas national team. We'll keep you guys updated on everything happening on local hoops and the scene right here on Inbound. Yesterday marked another eventful day in the PBA Philippine Cup, as the league had another triple header that included a blowout and a stunning game winner. Let's look at the latest results in our PBA recap. Yesterday's action began with the Magnolia Hotshots Pambansang Manok staying undefeated this conference with an easy 105-83 victory over the Terra Firma Deep, which remains winless in 3 games. The Hotshots spread the wealth on offense with 6 players finishing in double figures, led by Ian Sangalang's 18 points and Mark Baroca's 16. Terra Firma, meanwhile, paced the Deep with a game-high 25 points in their defeat. In the second game, the TNT Tropang Giga hardly showed signs of rust despite not seeing action for 2 weeks, sending the Rain or Shine Elasto Painters their second straight loss 79-69 to move up to 2-0 this season so far. Troy Rosario and RR Pugoy scored 13 points apiece for the Tropang Giga, while Glenn Cubutian added 10 points. The Elasto Painters, meanwhile, were led by JV Malcon's game-high 22 points as they absorbed their second straight setback this conference. The PBA certainly saved its best game for last as Ginebra and Northport battled back and forth before the Barangay emerged with a pulsating 87-85 victory thanks to a last-second jumper by Christian Stan Hardinger. In a game that featured the first meeting between Stan Hardinger and Northport big man Greg Slaughter, since their trade, Stan Hardinger made the basket that mattered. Stanley Pringle led Ginebra with 24 points, while LA Tenorio finished with 20, and Stan Hardinger had 13 in his first game against his former squad. Northport, meanwhile, was led by Robert Bollick's 23 points, followed by Slaughter's 16. Ginebra moves up to 2-2 in the standings, while the Batang Pier slid down to 1-3. Meanwhile, action resumes today at the Inares Center in Pasig as the Meralco Bolts face the Alaska Aces in today's lone scheduled game. The Bolts are third in the standings at 3-1 and are looking for their 4th win, while the Aces are in the middle of the pack at 2-2 and also, of course, looking to move up. Meanwhile, while their Kuyas battle it out in the PBA and the rest of our athletes compete in Tokyo Olympics, the Gilas-Pilipinas men's basketball team continue to play at the King Abdullah Cup in Saudi Arabia. However, Gilas saw its 3-game winning streak snapped last night as the team fell to Jordan 84-72 to fall to their second loss in the tournament. Despite taking a 5-point halftime lead, the Philippines could sustain it or could not sustain it as Jordan unleashed a strong third quarter to take control and didn't look back. They will next face Team Jordan A in the knockout semifinals with a chance to progress further into the tournament. And that is everything you need to know about basketball here and abroad in Inbound. Going back, it's day 8 of the Tokyo Olympics, and yet there are still Filipino athletes competing in their respective sports and showcasing their talents, and some of them are very, very close to giving more medals for the country. And it's so encouraging to see Filipinos from all walks of life and from all places here and abroad celebrating their feats whenever they win a match or advance to the next stage of competition. It shows the power of sports to unite people, which is something that we all need at this time. With several of our athletes still competing in Tokyo, our country will once again be united in cheering for them as they look to add more medals to our Olympic haul here and at the Games. For more sports stories here and abroad that not only just inform but also inspire, catch Plus Sports every day on Plus Network. That's it for us here. I'm Patricia Bermudez-Hizon. Thanks so much for watching.